My name is Dan Maloney. I am a DJ slash former record store employee, and welcome to my room, aka the captain's quarters.
Hearing about you, all about your disapproval. Don't remember the way I used to move you. Wrote you a letter, I heard it just as you said you wanted to tell me, and then I knew this better. Are you out there? Do you hear me? Can I call you? Do you still hate me? Are we talking? Are we fighting? Is it over? Are we right now? We're getting older, but we're acting younger. We should be smarter. It seems we're getting dumber. I have a picture of you and me in Brooklyn on the porch it was raining. Hey, I remember that day. Are you out there? Do you hear me? Can I call you? Do you still hate me? Are we talking? Are we fighting? Is it over? Are we right now?
Jawbreaker's 24-hour revenge therapy. I don't know, I picked this record just because it hit me at like a touchstone point of my life, kind of when I was a teenager. I was probably about 15 years old or 16 years old when it first grasped me. So around 97, so probably a few years after it came out. I mean, I went through a ska phase, I went through a pop punk phase, I went through, I'm getting hit like a hip hop phase. I was listening to Tribe Called Quest, I was listening to, Public Enemy, I was listening to, Guns N' Roses and Bon Jovi, all this stuff. I think it was a friend named Tom who tipped me off to their first record, which was Unfun, and he was like obsessed with it, and he was like kind of the gothy punk outsider dude, and he's like, you gotta check these guys out. And I, of course, once I find something new I like, I'm like, oh, I gotta get all the records. And then boom, and then you're like, now I'm going to the Fireside Bowl like every day, have my parents drop me off, and being into like all these indie bands, and they're just bands you can see. You could tell that Blake Schwarzenbach, the main songwriter, read books, and he, had, was highly literate, read a lot, and referenced all of these writers and things that he was reading at the time, whereas for a kid it's just like, whoa, what's this? Let me find out who Kerouac is, let me find out who Bukowski is, kind of led me down a rabbit hole, not only musically, but also kind of to read some cool books and get some cool ideas and write. So that kind of all kind of congealed at a really great time for me. I was a pimple-faced, like fat kid in high school that loved music and kind of created like I can do this, I can start a band, I could write a few songs about some girls. Well, I grew up around here in Skokie, and I was in a bunch of small bands. Once I realized I can get a guitar and play a few notes and come up with some of my own lyrics or whatever, I was like, all right, we'll do this. And so, I found like the people in high school. I was in a band called Chauncey, which I guess would be like a direct first influence band of Jawbreaker. And our initial goal was just to play the Fireside Bowl. I was like, that's the ultimate goal. Like, we just want to play the Fireside Bowl. It'll be so great. We don't care who we open for. And then that happened, and then it's like, okay, great. Well, let's see if we can go on tour. We can see if we can go on like a weekend tour of like the Midwest. That'd be great. Oh, it just takes some effort, but there's people will come out and see you play. Your friends will come out. You can get on shows. You just have to like put in a little bit of work, write some songs, and there'll be an audience for you. Especially I was lucky to be in a fortunate situation with, in the mid 90s, the late 90s in Chicago, we did have the Fireside Bowl. I was underage, like I couldn't drink. I was 16 years old, getting dropped off at a bowling alley in kind of a shitty part of Chicago at the time, which was, Logan Square, but it was a little hairier than it is now. And, they had all ages shows. They had 2 shows a night sometimes, and I would see a ska band open up for a hardcore band, or vice versa. There was such diverse, eclectic bills, so that's kind of like, well, I'm into ska now. I like this band. I'm going to check this out. So it kind of was like a huge way to just discover new music as a teenager. And I was able to see a lot of fantastic shows at Fireside Bowl and play there numerous times. Song in here called Boxcar, which is like their anthem. It's like, you're not punk, and I'm telling everyone, save your breath, I never was one.
Is that
so
1, 2, 3, 4, who's punk, what's the score?
1, 2, 3, 4, who's punk, who's the score, what's the score? So that's kind of like that's what everyone remembers. Like, oh, they wrote that hooky little dumb punk song that's swarmy, like kind of like a fuck you to what everyone's doing and getting popular. I mean, it came out in 1994, so bear in mind, like, Dookie, I think, came out a few weeks before. So it was right at the height. Nirvana was huge, grunge was huge, and then Dookie came out of the same scene, pretty much, the Gilman Street scene, and that was just a huge record. And this was kind of like the anti-Dookie in a way. I mean, they're probably similar punk bands, but this is kind of a moodier, it's a really dark, kind of grungier record. It's not really recorded particularly bright, or it's not really like shiny, and it's just kind of a moodier, darker record where it was easily glossed over and not as popular as Dookie, where it's very poppy and you could tell that a mainstream audience was going to really gravitate toward it. So they get lumped in with that emo movement, but it's easy to see that why this record was such a touchstone, like alongside like Fugazi, who would never want to be lumped in with the emo movement, but every emo band is influenced by Fugazi.
They transcend the genre.
Exactly. It's not only do the people are influenced by their ideals and their punk rock ideals, but just their music, their ethos, the whole gamut. And they're not like particularly handsome. They're just like everyman 3-piece dudes that travel around in a punk rock van. No, yeah, it was my first tattoo ever, and it's, on my lower back, which is now commonly known as the tramp stamp area. Before, I could safely say that in 1997, that was not a common term for the area. It was just picked to hide from my loving mother, Barb, who most likely would not see it, but hilariously did end up seeing it on a family vacation in Milwaukee. I recall just kind of leaning up against a car, and a wind kind of blew up my shirt in the back, and my mom thought I had a spider on my lower back, and hilariously came to swap my lower back and realized it was a tattoo. And not too pleased, and I eventually got to see them play once, not during this record, but for their last tour, actually. Probably the last time they ever played Chicago at the Metro was Smoking Pope's opening. And I lied to my mom and said, I'm going to study with some buddies. I'm not going to the Metro. Bands run their course, and their legacy is still intact for the most part. I mean, Blake Schwarzenbach still plays shows and plays some Jawbreaker songs, and he kind of went a little nutty, but people still love these records, their records, and people still cite them as influence, either musically or lyrically, or, one of those big bands, especially for people in my age range, I think, which kind of hit them at the right time. If it's, with me learning these songs and just hearing the lyrics, and they're just like, you're a young and impressionable dude, it's like the ultimate band. You're like, yes, man, this guy's talking about what I want to, you know, what's going on in my world. Emo night, DJ night, which with my friend James, and we kind of like, you know what, we should play some of these records that we listened to in high school. Like, they, you know, we may not listen to them all the time now, but I didn't ever sold them. I still have them, and people are kind of nostalgic for that time period, and we'll come out and sing along and totally get drunk and listen to old records. And you know, Jawbreaker is definitely one of the bands that, if not the biggest band, that I always play multiple songs from that people know and will sing along and be like, yes. I think they'll continue to be played. They'll continue to be written about or talked about.